What's going on, guys? My name's Chris. Today we're going to be talking about scarcity versus abundance in the mindset of somebody that thinks there's scarcity in the world and somebody that thinks that there's abundance in the world. So let's focus on scarcity. So when we think of scarcity, we think not having enough of something, right? So when it comes to adopting a scarcity mindset, what that typically means is that you don't feel as if what you want can be achieved. Just to sum it up in small words, maybe it's bettering your life, maybe it's finding a girlfriend, maybe it's advancing your career, moving out of your parents' house. There's so many different avenues there, but it's something that you want that you view as unattainable. Okay? So how did we get there? How did we get into a scarcity mindset? I believe it's negative reinforcement over time that puts you into that negative headspace. So when we think about looking at something as scarce, well, how did that happen? How did we get to that particular point? Well, when we think about it, as we've gone through our lives, there's been consistent negative reinforcement. So let's use a basic example. Let's say the most common one for guys is trying to find a girlfriend. Okay? So every girl that you approach doesn't like you. There's no girls out there. There's no good girls out there. No, it's never going to happen. Using words like that and phrases like that are that of a scarcity mindset, that something can't be accomplished. So let's focus on that example for a second here. So first thing I want to talk to you about is perhaps your underlying insecurities and your own self-image. How do you feel about yourself? Are you confident? Probably not if you think that there's scarcity out there, right? So how did you come to not be a confident person? Oftentimes it stems from a variety of childhood trauma. Now, I want to talk about childhood trauma just in a vacuum for a moment because I myself suffered from childhood trauma and it held me back for a very long time. Now, I went to therapy for roughly 10 years during my childhood in order to escape all of the bad behavior I had developed and try to become a better person. And I took those steps and, obviously I didn't want to do it, but I did it at the time. I didn't really have much of an option. For those out there that didn't go through therapy and weren't in a situation like that where they had to go to see a psychiatrist, what do you do now that you're older and now you're dealing with that trauma and you're trying to become better? What do you do if you suffered from childhood trauma? I hate to say this, but the vast majority of people have suffered some way, shape, or form during their childhood. Maybe they didn't feel loved. Maybe they were abused. There's so many different aspects of being abused, whether it's mentally or physically during your childhood and how it shapes and crafts your mind as you get older. Now, I don't say that to mitigate the fact that it's an impactful thing on you and your psyche, but I want you to think about the fact that there's commonalities across the board, and some of the most successful people have faced unprecedented levels of adversity in their lives, and they've been able to accomplish great things. So can you. Don't think that just because something happened to you in the past that you can't do something better in the future. Do you understand that? If you focus on your past and think that that is defining you and what you're doing moving forward, I want you to sit back and really take a look at things, because I think you'll find that your past is not indicative of your future trajectory. Your decisions and what you choose to do on a day-to-day basis is what's going to determine your overall trajectory. So if you are the type of person that did suffer from childhood trauma, whatever that trauma happens to be, I want you to seek help. Feel free to reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to sit down and listen, whether it's just a short therapy session or anything like that. But I want you to seek the help necessary to at least repair those wounds that have been untreated for years. So with that aside, let's talk about nowadays. So let's say you don't have that confidence. You don't believe something is possible. I want you to be honest with yourself. How many risks are you taking to achieve what it is that you want? Are you embracing this entitled mindset, or are you actively pursuing whatever your goal happens to be? If you are entitled, I completely understand how you got that mindset, but my question to you is, how's that working out for you? Clearly not too good, right? If you fall into this bracket. So what I want you to do is sit down, think about what it is that you want, and then write down what you're doing to work towards that goal. I want you to write this down every single day, because it'll reinforce in your head the commitments that you're about to make to yourself. Because if that right-hand column has nothing in it and you're not doing anything to get to your desired state, well, you have some work to do, right? There's some self-improvement that needs to take place. There's some wounds that need to be healed. There's some actions that need to take place. So, with that simple exercise out of the way, I want you to think long and hard about what it is that you want. And also how often you're pursuing that. Have you chosen not to pursue it because you're afraid? I get it. Trust me, I get it. Fear is inherently in all of us, especially when it comes to putting ourselves out there. Because back in the day, if you put yourself out there, you could be ostracized from your tribe or your group. So I think it's inherently in our genetic makeup to want to stay a little conservative. Not always, but I think that level of fear is always there, right? The fear of heights, the fear of loud noises, some inherent fears that are in us as human beings. Same thing goes for putting ourselves out there. Because you're leaving yourself exposed, right? There's a level of rejection that takes place. So if we're sitting there in a headspace where we think something can't be achieved, what actions are we taking that have given us that mindset? Okay, let's say you are taking those actions and you're not getting that desired result, and it is consistent negative reinforcement day in and day out, and you don't feel as if anything's going to change. Well, probably not. But is your approach changing? That's what I want you to ask yourself. Are you doing the same thing, expecting a different result, or are you pivoting and changing different things about yourself? Perhaps it is a confidence issue. And if it is a confidence issue, you need to find a source of pride in your life. Something that you can craft and develop and be really good at and practice and pride yourself on that thing. There's so many different ways to do this, but if you are not practicing and you have nothing to pride yourself on, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to develop that level of confidence to go out and actively pursue something that you want. So we have to think about that. So that's where a level of self-improvement needs to take place. But as we're pursuing whatever our goal is, and now we're pivoting and we're changing and adopting new habits and trying different things, we're still scared. I understand, but we go forward anyway. Because what's the alternative? The alternative is stagnation and depression, and ultimately not being happy, right? And that's what we all want as human beings. We all want to be happy. So, you're actively moving forward in the direction of achieving your goal. It might not be instantaneous. It might take 1 year. It might take 10 years. But if you're actively working towards something, that in and of itself can provide you with a source of pride that you are trying. Whereas most people gave up and threw the ideas out the window a long time ago because they were too scared themselves. That's the reality of it. That's why the majority of people give up on their hopes and dreams, because they're too afraid and see it as being so unattainable, when the reality is anything is attainable. And I mean that. Anything that you want out of life is attainable. The level of work required to get whatever it is that you want out of life is going to vary depending on what that goal is, of course, but you really need to realize anything can be accomplished. And I truly mean that. So, as you're moving forward and you're changing and you're focusing on that goal and you're consistently striving and trying new things to try to get there, over time, you will achieve results. Statistically speaking, the odds of you going throughout your entire life, constantly taking risks, constantly putting yourself out there, and not getting any kind of return, it's virtually impossible. But you need to be very strong-minded, you need to be disciplined to put the work in, and ultimately you'll be able to get some results. Now, you might need to make some changes that'll make you uncomfortable along the way. That's just part of the process. That's part of growing. That's the metamorphosis that needs to take place in order for you to get to where you want to be. Don't be afraid. There's nothing to be afraid of, except for the current space that you're in if you're unhappy. That should scare you enough to go out and actively make a change and go after what you want. So let's talk about abundance. Growing up, I had no friends. No friends. To the point where I recall in high school, I went to a school that had, it was once a month or once every other month, I guess you call it like a holiday more or less, but it was called Early Thursday. And Early Thursday, all the kids would get out at about 12 o'clock. And all the kids would go out with their friend groups and go to various restaurants, go out to eat, go hang out with one another. And I can't tell you how many early Thursdays I had in high school where I would get in the car with my mother and start crying because I had no friends. And I felt like nobody liked me. And I didn't feel accepted. I'll never forget that level of pain that I felt. Utter frustration and anger. And it made me hate people in a way because I felt as if nobody liked me. But I think looking back on it, the reality was I didn't like myself and I wasn't taking the risk to put myself out there and try to integrate myself with a social circle. I became so introverted that any opportunity ceased to exist because I was sitting in stagnation. Do you understand what I'm saying? So it's easy to blame other people, but you really have to look at your own actions and think about, what am I doing to change this situation? So as I got older, there was a few things that provided me with that abundance mindset. The first thing was girls. I think that's true for a lot of guys, that when you have girlfriends or you have girls that like you, it makes you feel really good about yourself. If you've never experienced that, perhaps there's some self-improvement and development that needs to take place on your end. Perhaps you need to go to the gym, maybe you need a new haircut, maybe you need to cut your facial hair, maybe you need to grow some facial hair. But you got to be open to trying new things to make sure you're as attractive as possible to the opposite sex. Because ultimately, that's what's going to get you the results, along with your charisma, your persuasion, and your communicative abilities. So with that aside, that was one big driving thing for me. The second thing was money. So I struggled with money. When I moved out, I've mentioned this on the channel before, when I moved out of my mother's house when I was 19, I had no money at all. I was so broke, I had to steal food. I used to go to Stop and Shop, which is a grocery chain around here, and they have these scanner guns where you could scan your own groceries, and then when you get to the register, you scan a barcode, and it imports all of the data that was on the scanner into the register, and then you could check out. Man, I stole so much. I stole so much food because I didn't have a choice. So I would buy like 3 things, but I'd really have like 15. So I understand what it's like not to have any money. So when I was younger, I took a massive risk to try to alleviate my financial situation and try to obtain abundance when it comes to money. And I'm not saying this to brag or anything like that, but my decision worked. There was some heavy consequences that I had to pay as a result of those decisions. In 2015, I was arrested, and I was facing 2.5 years in a minimum mandatory prison sentence for the charges that were brought upon me. So prior to that, for those 4 years, I felt amazing. I felt untouchable. I felt like I was on top of the world. I had virtually everything I ever wanted at the time. I had friends, I had girlfriends, I had money. At the time, that's all that mattered to me, and I had all of those things. And in the blink of an eye, it was all gone. And now, I'm in a position where I'm looking at my future saying, oh my God, what have I done to my life? Did I really throw away and ruin my entire life? So when you're in that situation and you're looking at 2.5 years of prison time, well, what do? Leading up to that, I was a heavy marijuana consumer, so I knew no matter which direction the pendulum swang, I was not going to be able to do that any longer. So about 30 days after my initial arrest and I was bailed out, I decided I was never going to smoke again. So I made that decision, and I did that because I knew either I was going to make the decision or somebody else was going to do it for me. And then after that, that was just a small step. Luckily, I didn't have any drug addictions. I was kind of addicted to marijuana, but that's a story for another day. So it was a relatively easy decision for me to make to say that's no longer going to be a part of my life. So now here I am. I'm in college, by the way. I had to move out of my home, a beautiful home, a 4-floor, 3-bed, 3-bathroom, brand new townhouse right outside of Boston. Had to move out of that. Couldn't stay there anymore. And I had to move back in with my father. The strike to my ego and the strike to my pride after everything that I had built, illegitimately, mind you, but, factual nonetheless, was something I really can't even put into words. Just imagine your whole life was ripped away from you in the span of 24 hours. What do you do in that situation? Well, for me, I immediately fell back from an abundance mindset into a scarcity mindset. Rightfully so, right? I had everything at my fingertips, and now I have virtually nothing. So, what did I do in that situation? I really only had one option. for me anyway. And that option was to focus all of that negative energy on my education. There was no other alternative. What was I going to do? Just give up or continue to make poor decisions? I was more intelligent than that. I knew that the reality of it was that the only saving grace that I had and the only silver lining to this entire situation was my education. That was going to be my ticket if this was going to play out in my favor. So that's exactly what I did. I focused all of my energy into my education and ultimately managed to get on Dean's List and graduated near the top of my class with honors over the course of that time period while this case was going on. When I walked across that stage, my headspace completely changed the second I walked off the other side. Now, for most people, graduating is an accomplishment, but for me, it was a massive accomplishment, and I'm going to tell you why. When I was growing up, I was in alternative education classes, or the SPED classes, as most of you would know it out there. And I had stigmatized myself and pigeonholed myself into this abstract, ostracized person that I really imposed that label upon myself. But I thought other people viewed me that way. But really, it was just me that was viewing myself like that. So my behavioral challenges when I was growing up were so severe that the superintendent of the school district that I attended during my youth told my mother that I was never going to be able to live and sustain a normal life as a result of the behavioral challenges that I faced on a day-to-day basis. So when I walked across that stage, I felt so victorious that I had conquered that goal that I had set for myself. I had shifted all of that negative energy into something positive. That's what I want you to do. I want you to take the negative energy and drive it into something positive because, quite frankly, there is no other alternative. And if you consistently do that, you will get great results in return. I was very fortunate. There were charges pressed against me, but lucky for me, I did not have to go to jail, and I do not take that lightly at all. But it was enlightening. It was a massive reality slap that your decisions and shortcuts that you try to make in life are not going to get you anywhere. It's going to take hard work, perseverance, and drive to ultimately get you into a better headspace and a better place in your life overall. So that mindset shift, when I came off of that stage, I knew I had conquered the goal that I had set for myself, and I did it on my own. I did it knowing that I had no other choice, and my back was up against the wall. And sometimes you need to put yourself into a vulnerable position like that to achieve what you want. Because that is, when you're in a state of necessity, you are willing to do things you wouldn't normally do. And perhaps that means working even harder to get to where you want to be. So as I came out the other side, I realized I couldn't go back to that life. I needed to pursue a career, pursue what I'm passionate about, and I've done exactly that. And I have worked tirelessly over the past 4 years to try to erase the stigma that I had brought upon myself during my younger years and try to become that positive influence and become a person that I like looking at in the mirror on a daily basis. And it takes work to get there. It's work that I want you to be willing to put in, because I can promise you that when you do get on the path to where you want to go, you're going to feel so good on a daily basis. You're going to be happy when you wake up because you know that you're making a difference. You're making a difference not only for yourself, but everybody around you. And that will make you feel good. But that abundance mindset is going to have a different catalyst for every one of us. For me, it was money, girls, and friends. For you, it might be different. But whatever those catalysts are, I want you to think about how you can go about attacking each and every one of those and slowly develop a plan, baby steps, to get to whatever your end goal is. If you need help doing this and you want somebody to sit down and work with you, please go on my website, RTBTransformations.com. I do have a personal development coaching service where I do exactly this. I sit down with you, I iron out where you're looking to go, but we need to escape that scarcity mindset. Anything is possible out there. It all comes down to whether you want to put the work in to get there or not. Stop being afraid. Drop that at the door. Take the risk. Your level of risk tolerance is going to go up over time as you realize that whatever you want is possible, and when you come home at the end of the day after taking those risks, you're not hurt. You're completely fine. You're in the same position you were before, so why not go out there and get after it? There's no reason not to. That's all I got for you guys. Thank you so much for listening. I really do appreciate it. Please comment, like, and subscribe. It really helps the channel. And with that, I am out of here. Have a great day.